that the perspective of shared value forces you to look at two things, the longer term and to look at respect. And I think that's what Nestle is saying. It's, we not only want to have partners and profitability, we also want people to trust us, and we want to earn their respect. And I think that goes beyond simply finding profit-making opportunities.
I think the relationship between business and society has changed. You know, I've been in this business now for about 35 years, and during that time, I think there's been a shift in people's thinking. I think we've moved from an adversarial model where government, NGOs, and business have often been at loggerheads to a realization that the problems that face mankind today are of a magnitude whereby they're not susceptible to a single-party solution. Governments alone cannot solve these problems. Global warming, you know, would be a good example. And I think there is a growing realization amongst these stakeholders, and indeed amongst the public at large and amongst academia, that if we are going to solve the problems that we face today, that we have to work together. We identify what is a compelling business need, because let's be very frank and honest. Creating shared value is born out of business imperatives, but it is marrying those business imperatives with a very compelling social need which is identified in a given country. Now that may change from country to country. I think consumers are becoming much more savvy. They want to know about the company behind the brands that they love. It is important that the wealth, the value that is created, goes to those who most need it. And if I may say in conclusion, I think consumers are becoming much more savvy. They want to know about the company behind the brands that they love. It's about values, it's about respect. The word that I like to use is trust, because in fact our whole business model, indeed you might argue that the whole capitalist system is based on this idea of trust.
To the point that John mentioned, it's so important to figure out what is the systemic problem that society faces, and to what extent can the business or the product or the service of the company can actually be part of solving the systemic problem. FINMA Properties, for instance, have already looked into the need for more affordable housing. Therefore, FINMA Properties made a very deliberate effort in looking at the market of the low-income families, ties up with the Quezon City government, and put together Bisticville. Essentially, what they did was they made a study of what is the average rental income of informal settlers in Quezon City. The 2,000 is the threshold, so to speak, of how much a family can actually pay. What essentially FINMA did together with the Quezon City government is to develop a model that allows for a low-income family to actually pay 2,000 a month to amortize a better built home. There are ways to actually solve systemic problems, and there is a business way of solving it. Sometimes companies actually adopt shared value strategies without calling it shared value strategies or inclusive strategies. You can see that there are many things that are happening in the business community right now. It's not called shared value, but clearly there is a shared value that is created. And I think it is also our responsibility to make our CEOs realize, hey, what you've actually done, yes, it increased your market share. But beyond increasing your market share, actually you've helped so many people by democratizing a lot of these things, by making it more accessible to people who in the past couldn't afford and couldn't have access to it.
We work in very remote rural areas without electricity. And interestingly, even though they have no electricity, they all have cell phones. So we find the cell phones out there. Now, it happens that there are now technologies which we have here. I've got like a solar panel that charges this thing, which gives you light and which can also charge your phone. So now these communities which have no electricity can now access technology like this. But they all have cell phones, but hardly anyone has a solar light. Well, why is that? Right? It's because there's a manufacturer, but he has no distribution. The person who might want to buy it will get a lot of benefit when he buys it. Actually, what you find is they save money because they don't buy kerosene. They earn extra money because they have extra time. Their children study, right? And they're more secure. So there's a lot of benefit. In fact, when they invest in something like this, their return on investment is hundreds of %. It's a fantastic investment. Partnerships is integral to business. What's different now is getting partnerships where you're solving needs of customers that didn't used to be considered customers, and working together to come up with those solutions that meet those needs.
It's so important to see who are the key players of this ecosystem that need to merge, that need to converge.
Profoundly, because of the information revolution, which has democratized information and has made everybody a participant. Everybody can now express a view. I think the option of not seeking partnerships, of not getting involved, I don't think that's an option anymore. But I like to see things in positive terms, really, rather than what is the downside. At the end of the day, every business will choose whether they want to get involved in, the popular debate. And the popular debate is all about how can we build a better world? How can we improve things? Yeah? How can we develop countries? How can we negate the deleterious effects on the environment? We fortified Bear Brand, which is the largest milk brand in the country. So the point that Paul Bulke was making earlier on about scale, this is very important because you want to try and influence, you want the maximum number of people to benefit. So if you've got a large brand like Bear Brand, you really can deliver what is needed by people to a very, very large sector of the community.
This is about education. This is how you communicate shared value.
Don't do CSV for reasons of window dressing. I think if that's the motivation, then we've got it wrong. The motivation has to be right. It has to be absolutely right. Do it because it's the right thing to do. Do it because it makes sound business sense. That has to be at the core.
How do we, because creating shared value, a lot of it is about how do we put more effort into solving societal problems. And if we think, for example, in the context of the Philippines, most of our poor, many of the problems are in more remote areas. How do we organize the SME so that we can scale up the activity? It's going to take me a very, very, very long time to penetrate all of those 50,000 villages unless I can find a way to replicate and scale up SME activities. So I think that becomes a really big challenge.
In parts of Mindanao, a region which is emerging from decades of conflict, what role can CSV play to transform this region?
Is precisely to provide opportunities to bring well, I guess what was called ARM then, but it's now the Bangsamoro, because I think that's where our competence, or the business competence lies, in providing opportunities. And I think, in fact, I'm not too worried, because now that you have peace and order, and once you can get law and order in, I think the businesses will come in.
Be a lot of trust building that needs to happen in the next 2 years. We need to actually put in not only private sector investment, but a lot of public investments. We need to bring the schools back. We need to bring the health centers back, which were the roads, the infrastructure. We need to bring all of those things back, if only for the Bangsamoro people to realize that the government is really serious about making this place a place of growth, a place of development.
Talking about fragile environments, one of the things that we've done recently is to sign an MOU with the Department of Defense, who of course have a great deal of land, much of it in the south. The south is a very good area to grow coffee. And the idea of our MOU is that the Department of Defense supplies the land. We will transfer knowledge about coffee growing, sell coffee plants at cost. And the vision is that one day we will have retired military men and women and returning fighters, growing coffee side by side on this land. And so, you know, when we embarked on this journey, I had no idea that it could lead in this direction. But again, it's a very good example of how creating shared value, how business working with government, with the Defense Department in this case, can truly create value, in this case, a livelihood and hopefully stability.
Farming is actually the best and toughest school for entrepreneurship because of all the things that they can't control, all the things they must control, the things they have to manage. And I think that was a problem I saw in my head, but I think he provided the solution, which what you need to do to push these farmers a step level is to actually provide, to show them the possibilities, to show them the innovations, to show them the things they can do. Very often they're very much mired in the day-to-day, but they really are entrepreneurs already and they face really tough problems. I don't think you legislate creating shared value, but I think you create the necessary partnerships, you create the environment.
You don't probably even need legislation because there are existing laws that actually encourage shared value creation. So for instance, in the case of socialized housing, there's a law, right? 15% of a project, the horizontal development, 15% of that needs to be allocated for socialized housing. So companies that are into this real estate development are actually by law required to build socialized housing. But what model of socialized housing is the challenge where CSV can come in? And that's precisely where FINMA has looked into that idea.
There needn't necessarily be a trade-off at all. Indeed, I would like to think that creating shared value is very much about increasing the overall size of the pie. So I think it is about creativity. I think it's about imagination. It's about the art of the possible. If you see things in terms of a trade-off, then you probably will end up making a compromise. If you see things in terms of 1 and 1 making 3, then you will probably find the synergies.
The schools have provided, the schools that you come from, the schools that you're in, are providing you a lot of knowledge and skills on how to do good business and how to be good in business. And I think this is a gift. This is a blessing to all of you guys. There are very few of you who actually get access to this kind of education. And let me begin by saying, therefore, that it's important for you to realize that. To realize that you have been blessed with a lot of knowledge, a lot of skills, and a lot of, in fact, exposure, even to the fact that Nestle brings you into this kind of a forum, makes you the privileged few who actually get to learn new things and new ideas of how to do things. And I guess the challenge is, how do you make the most of what you have? How do you harness these gifts, these blessings, these graces that you have to actually change this country, to change the communities where you eventually, or the businesses that you will be involved in, such that it actually changes this society, our society, and make this world a better place to live in. First Spider-Man movie, the movie ends with those that are given great power are given greater responsibility. And that's, I think, the first point that I wanted to make, that you are the privileged few that actually are challenged to do something much more than create wealth for a few.
The funny thing is that actually these problems are the same as when we were kids. And you know, it's not, I mean, especially nowadays, it's not about not having the technologies available. They are available. It's not about, you know, a lack of capital. It's not about a lack of, you know, kind of talent. Somehow, we're all working, you know, we have all of these very smart people working together, acting stupid, right? And so we're never getting out of it. And I think at the end, it's because we're pursuing this paradigm which just isn't working. You know, business in general has been on the sidelines, and they said, yung mga those issues, problema yan ng government, or that's for the church or for charities, right? But business is on the sidelines. Now, so I think the big shift is really this paradigm in how do we work together, because none of these problems can be fixed by any one player. We have to work together collectively. I would really hope that as you guys go into your careers, you become part of this movement.
I'm much nearer the end of my career, and you're at the beginnings or approaching the beginnings of your career. And the one thing I would say to you is that the speed of change that you will see will be meteoric, even compared with what you could imagine today. And that means that we are, I think, heading towards crises at a much greater pace, be it the disparity in wealth between the rich and the poor, conflicts between religions, global warming, all of these huge challenges, which, as we've said, are not susceptible to single-party solutions. So that would be the first thought. The second thought would be really building on what Rafa was saying. In my experience, a lot of people have views about leadership. Everybody has an opinion about leadership. There are few leaders, actually. The difference, I think, being those people who are willing to take responsibility, who are motivated and called to act. It's very easy, I think, to express views, stand on the sidelines. And I think, as Rafa so eloquently put it, you are in a very, very privileged position. You are the future leaders of your country. And I very much hope that you do take that choice, that you do heed that call to action, because the call to action, I think, has never been more imperative.
I graduated college in 1966, so I have a very idealized view of college and school. I guess what I like to say is, if you're going to be a good leader, don't lose your passion and keep optimistic, because that's how you create shared value, by being optimistic, by being passionate about what you believe in. And that's something you tend to lose when you go out into the real world and you'll be working for somebody who's 1/10 as smart as you are but earning 10 times your salary. And you're going to ask what it's all about. So I think part of the leadership starts from where you are right now, and don't lose that sense of optimism. How many of you saw A Beautiful Mind? Russell Crowe says, perhaps it is good to have a beautiful mind, but an even greater gift is to discover a beautiful heart. So I think that's the essence of being a leader.
Yeah, there's really this passion, I think, in our generation, na kasi namin yung sarili ko. But, you know, to change, to transform the Philippines, because we see, you know, the traffic outside and all of these things, the poverty, and we have that passion to change it. So hopefully this has given you insight on how you can do that, whether it's your own business or when you're working in a corporation.